Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina wa Mawlana Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barik wa sallim. Dear fellows, Assalamu alaikum. This is Dr. Rana Tanveer Hussain, and today we are going to discuss types of variables. In this topic, we are basically going to discuss different types of variables. For example, dependent variable, independent variable, moderating variable, intervening or mediating variables. And there are some discrete and continuous variables as well. If you differentiate between independent variable and dependent variable, we will see that an independent variable basically a variable which manipulate or bring a change in another variable. It basically a cause to bring a change in an effect. And dependent variable is basically a variable whose change is dependent upon the change of the independent variable. So dependent variable is dependent on the independent variable. Dependent variable is the effect and independent variable is the cause. And if you see the example, mental health is the dependent variable that is affected by the exercises. So exercise is basically the independent variable which brings change in the dependent variable. So this is very easy to understand differentiation between the dependent and independent variable. Next we have some conditions to have independent and dependent variable in our framework. These are very simple. The dependent and independent variable should co-vary. They should have some kind of relationship, right? Co-vary or correlation. And next condition is cause must occur before the effect. Cause is the independent variable. So change in independent variable must occur before the change in dependent variable. Third condition is there are always some other variables which could also have effect on the dependent variable. So you need to identify those variables and control their effect in your research as much as possible. Fourth condition is there must be a logical explanation why independent variable is linked with the dependent variable. So you need to give a theoretical or logical explanation for this. These are four conditions to have independent and dependent variable in our study. Then we have mediating and moderating variable. If you look at the mediating variable, it basically explains how independent variable affects dependent variable. How? So it basically answered the question of how. It serves a link in the chain of the causation. The chain of causation, for example, independent variable has effect on dependent variable, but if a mediator comes in between, so independent variable will have effect on mediating variable, and then mediating variable will have a causal effect on dependent variable, right? In study on exercise and mental health, stress is basically the mediator. Exercise reduces the stress, and then reduction in stress will leads to a better mental health. So this is the example of mediation. And if we look at the moderating variable basically alters the effect of the independent variable on dependent variable. It alters the strength or the direction of the independent variable on dependent variable. Like independent variable could have a positive or negative effect on dependent variable. And if a moderating variable comes and interact with the independent variable, so the effect will basically change. And when and for whom independent variable has an effect is answered by the moderating variable. For example, social media use, mental health is moderated by the age. So age basically moderates the effect of the independent variable on dependent variable. Will have some other examples as well. So for example, moderating variable, if you read this example, you will come to know that in this example, there is a relationship between availability of reference manuals that manufacturing employees have access to and product rejects. So here there are two variables identified here, availability of reference manuals and number of product rejects. Number of product rejects depends on the availability of the reference manual. And then if you read this paragraph, there is another variable which have a contingent effect between this relationship, a contingent, and that is the inclination and urge of the employees. Like the more inclination or the interest or the urge employees have, the more will they will consult the available reference material, and it will affect the number of product reject. So how can we see it in the model? Like if you look at this slide, availability of a reference manual has positive or negative effect on number of product reject. So this is a simple causation. And if we look, bring moderation in this causation, availability of the reference manuals have positive or negative effect on number of rejects, and interest and inclination of the employees towards the reference material will basically have a moderating effect between this causation relationship, right? So this variable, moderating variable, will have a positive or negative moderation, meaning by that it will strengthen the effect of independent variable or weaken its effects on dependent variable, strengthen or weaken. So therefore it is called a contingent effect of the moderating variable. This is another example. If you read this example, you will come to know workforce diversity has a positive or negative effect on the organizational effectiveness, and a moderating variable, managerial expertise have a moderating effect between this relationship. Managerial, the expertise of the management will basically strengthen or weaken the effect of workforce diversity on organizational effect. So this is another example of moderating variable. Then we have intervening or mediating variable. If we look at the definition of the mediating variable, which is already explained, so mediating variable has a temporal effect. It has a time dimension. It basically explains the effect of independent variable on dependent variable. How independent variable behave with the dependent variable depends on the mediating variable basically. ओ यार की मसला है कसम नाल। सर जी मैं एक मीटिंग में हूँ, 5-7 मिनट तक मैं आ रहा हूँ। Okay, so we were discussing the mediating variable. So let's have an example of mediating variable. In previous example, where we look at the workforce diversity and organizational effectiveness, so workforce diversity has a positive or negative effect on the organizational effectiveness. So another variable could have a mediating effect between this relationship, like creative synergy. So creative synergy could have a positive or negative effect in between the workforce diversity and organizational effectiveness. Like first of all, workforce diversity will affect the creative synergy, and then creative synergy will have effect on organizational effectiveness. So in this way, creative synergy will play an intervening role between the workforce diversity and organizational effectiveness. Although workforce diversity have a direct effect on the organizational effectiveness, but when creative synergy comes in between, then workforce diversity will have a effect on creative synergy, and then creative synergy will have effect on organizational effectiveness. So how workforce diversity behave to the organizational effectiveness is explained by the creative synergy. So this is the intervening causation relationship. Thank you so much. I hope you have got the point and understand the types of different variable. See you with the next topic of theoretical framework.